For decades, Chad has maintained a strong alliance with France, relying on French military forces' support to boost its internal security and political stability. Under the leadership of late President Idriss Déby, this alliance was a cornerstone of Chad's foreign policy, shaping its relationship with the West and defining its strategic position in the region. However, Chad's decision to pursue closer diplomatic relations with Russia represents a deliberate shift in its political calculus. Amid the rising anti-French and anti-Western sentiments across Africa, Chad's leadership may see an opportunity to diversify its diplomatic partnerships and assert greater autonomy on the global stage. By engaging with Russia, a major player with its own geopolitical interests, Chad hopes to broaden its diplomatic options and strengthen its position in both regional and international politics. This move highlights Chad's evolving political strategy and willingness to adapt to any changes in global trends, which has the potential to reshape Africa's geopolitical structure. Despite assurances of support from France and Western countries such as the United States, Chad's President Mahamat Dett's decision to meet with Russia's President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on January 24 raises questions about his motivation for seeking diplomatic relations with Russia. This interesting move comes amid increasing Western pressure and demonstrates Chad's desire to broaden its diplomatic relationships beyond traditional Western allies. Chad's historical role as a linchpin of French geopolitical strategy in Central Africa means that the decision to engage with Russia has very significant implications for France. For decades, Chad has been a strategic ally of France, providing a base for military interventions and contributing significantly to France's regional influence. France's strategic location has allowed it to monitor its former Central African colonies, ensuring stability and protecting its interests in the region. However, Chad's outreach to Russia suggests a possible shift in its foreign policy priorities and strategic alliances. This move could reflect Chad's desire to assert greater independence in its foreign nations and reduce its reliance on traditional Western patriots, potentially altering the dynamics of France's influence in Central Africa. For example, in the 1960s and 1970s, France intervened to support the Chadian government forces in fighting the fraudulent Hissène Habre rose to power in 1982 thanks to French support. When Idriss Déby deposed Habre to take power, France did not intervene. Instead, they supported him and did so for 13 years until he died. France was as well responsible for assisting his son, the current president of Chad, in seizing power via a military coup following his father's death. So look at this, looking back on Chad's history since its independence, one constant thing has been France's presence and interventions. The reason for this being that France values Chad highly due to its strategic location from which it monitors the Sahel and Sahara region and dispatches troops for regional interventions. Chad's importance as a French ally grew after a series of coups swept across Sahel, affecting Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali, and forcing French troops to leave these countries. This expulsion of French troops made Chad the last country in the region to host French troops, increasing its importance, because France's deployment in Cam had helped to project France's military power in Sahel, while also portraying France as a leading actor of the continent. This means that France no longer wields much power over Chad, and the Chadian government can do whatever it wants, including the complete opposite of what France wants. This was evident in early 2022, when France insisted that President Déby recused himself from running for president and appointed prime minister. However, Déby refused, but France had no choice to accept it because there is a risk of Chad expelling French forces, something that France wanted to avoid at all cost. Furthermore, Chad's strategic importance to France currently dictates that if France wishes to remain in Chad, it must support Chad regardless of the circumstances. In addition to this, anti-French sentiment has begun to spread in Chad, as it has in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. There is a growing demand among Chadian citizens and political elites for French troops to withdraw completely from the country. A coalition of activists, including the Wakatama movement, has announced that it will begin protest if France does not withdraw its troops by the end of 2023. These activists and political leads point out France's double standard in supporting the president's unconstitutional takeover following his father's death, as well as how France launched deadly air strikes and rebels in 2019. Meanwhile, their mission in Chad was purportedly to combat terrorists. This means that resentment of French forces may make it easier for opposition forces within the regime to mobilize against President Déby, and whoever arrives will undoubtedly not be a friend of France. Putting all of this together, we can see why President of Chad had the courage to fly to Moscow for an exclusive meeting with President Moscow. On January 24, Russian President Vladimir Putin posted Chadian Transitional President Mahamat Idris Déby during his official visit to Moscow. President Déby's trip to Russia is only the second by Chadian president since the country gained independence from France, and it is the first official visit by a Chadian leader to Moscow in 56 years. However, this does not in any way imply that Chad had completely cut ties with Russia before now. Chad's president was supposed to attend the recently completed Russia-Africa summit, but due to Western pressure, he was represented by Foreign Minister Mahamat Saleh. Also, President Déby's father attended the first Russia-Africa summit in 2019 as the Chad's head of state. Now, the recent meeting between President Déby and President Putin focused on the prospects for further developing Russian-Chadian relations in a variety of areas, as well as regional and international issues. According to a transcript posted on the Kromland website, Putin stated that the two countries have numerous opportunities to strengthen their bilateral ties, and that Moscow will double the quota for Chadian students studying in Russian universities. Security was a major topic of discussion. Chad is currently experiencing political instability and insecurity both internally and externally. Aside from the insecurity caused by jihadists, the Chadian government faces disruptions from both full rebel groups and opposition parties, all of which could step up at any time to take over power from the government administration. While France is currently the primary source of stability in the country, the Chadian government has decided not to rely solely on France and to seek other relationships with other countries, including Russia, to help combat insecurity and instability. According to an expert, Chad has not yet considered expelling the local French military contingent and is unlikely to do so. However, the country is interested in establishing military cooperation with Moscow, which is why the visit is taking place. Aside from security, the two leaders discussed to strengthen trade and economic ties. According to President Vladimir Putin, a large number of documents are being prepared to help strengthen the legal framework. So far, economic relations between Russia and Chad have been minimized even by Russia-African cooperation standards. But with this meeting, things will start to change. Chad's agricultural sector is in need of Russian fertilizers, as well as vaccines and food. In addition, Chad is interested in Russian investments in the fuel and energy sectors. Chad's meeting with Russia indicates the gradual strategic shift away from France. The Chadian presidency has that they can no longer rely solely on France, due to rising anti-French sentiments, and so while it may not kick out French troops, there is the need to diversify relations, not only with Russia but also with other countries. According to an expert, Mahamat Déby's visit to Moscow was intended to strengthen his domestic authority as pro-Russian sentiments are strong in the changing society. Déby is demonstrating that he is not a French puppet by developing relationships with alternative partners, the expert added. This statement is correct because many political elites with the ability to remove President Déby from power are upset about France's continued in the country. The president is using this visit to Moscow to solidify his position in power. So, what does this mean for France? One thing is certain: this meeting marks only the beginning of Chad's current diplomatic relationship with Russia, and France is not pleased with the meeting between the key ally in Sahel and Russia, a Western rival. But can France do anything about it? The answer is certainly no. As previously stated, Chad is extremely important to France because it is the only country in the Sahel that still houses the French troops. Given the growing anti-French sentiments in Chad, France would not want to do anything that will turn the government against them. If France wishes to remain in the country, it must support the Chadian government decision to partner with Russia or turning a blind eye. Russia has no objections to France's presence in any African country because it has a relatively flexible African policy. This is why most African countries want to collaborate with Russia. While Chad does not intend to remove French troops from its soil, the need for that may gradually disappear as Chad's foreign relations diversify to include China, Russia, Turkey, and many more. France's presence in Africa has indeed begun to fade. If Chad succeeds to kick French troops out of their country, France's grip on Sahel countries will be completely broken and these countries will all be free. What are your thoughts? Please let us know in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share this video.